Hi and welcome to another narration presented by yours truly, Cryptid's Roost. Please be so kind as to throat punch the like button and smack the arse of the subscription button as well. And remember to chokehold that notification bell and then select all. That way you'll receive all notifications each time I upload a new video. And by subscribing you'll be the first to see all of our new spooky creepypasta stories. I would just like to say a very big thank you to all of the authors that I have worked with and all the ones that I will work with in the future. So thank you all, my brothers and sisters. And now let's just take a moment's silence for all the haters. That's enough. If you would like to support the channel and buy me a very much loved coffee, you can send your donations, big or small, to paypal.me/cryptidsroost. And why not hashtag cryptidsroost in your comments. As a new added bonus, be sure to check out the blooper reel at the end of the video. So grab your coffee, sit back and enjoy the show. And don't forget, where fear is, happiness is not. When the Red Prophet Jumped. This awesome story is written by Corpse Child, a wonderful author over on Reddit. If you would like to read more of their works, a link to their Reddit profile and their subreddit will be below in the description. I need to make one thing clear before I go any further. I did not push him. I don't give a damn what's being said. I didn't push him off the ledge. Even if I had, however, I think we're all about to find out soon just how little it would matter anyway. I've seen what's going to happen. People eating each other in the street, the sky turning red, and all-round panic of the world ending. I have to say, it's funny how people are scared of the end, not because of any philosophical or theological reason, at least not any I'm aware of currently, but rather the fact that I know that everything that is about to occur now had occurred billions of times over. That said, I can comfortably say that it's not the end itself we should fear. It's what will happen to those who are unfortunate enough to survive. If you're wondering how I know this, well, it's what he showed me before he jumped. That's right, jumped, not pushed. That day started as a nice hike with my girlfriend, Ariel, up the Glade Mountain Pass. We'd been planning the trip for upwards of a month, at least ever since she'd gotten into her new fitness kick. Of course, I don't mind a bit of exercise myself. Plus, the Glade Mountains were one of the most beautifully picturesque places you'd ever see outside of a Renaissance painting. Especially around this time of year, when the breeze was just right and the sun was able to draw out the vibrant colours of the vegetation. It was one of the best places to spend an afternoon or two. It was also where I used to go hiking with my family when I was younger. The other reason that day was so special was because, unbeknownst to her at the time, that was the day I planned to propose to her. We dated for just coming up on a year, and I knew she was the one I wanted to spend my life with. No matter how hard I try, I can't help but feel this as being morbidly ironic. One of the happiest days of my life marks the beginning of the end. We'd been jogging up the trail for about an hour when we finally reached the overlook of the mountain pass. Seeing me winded, Ariel pipes up laughing. "Tired out already? Looks like we're gonna need to do this more often." Yeah, make your jokes, sweetheart. After managing to make it to the nearby bench across from the overlook, we sat down and started unzipping our backpacks for the lunches we'd packed. "God, it's so beautiful out today." I smiled. I can see something even more beautiful. "What was that, pumpkin?" I snapped from a daze. "Huh?" "You said something. crap, she heard me. I started blushing. Well, I guess now's as good as any time to spill it. Oh, it's nothing. It's just that, well, we've been dating for a good while now, and... That was when I noticed she wasn't looking at me anymore. She was staring off into the distance to the overlook. Confused, I followed her gaze to see a man standing in front of the plaque that marks every mile or so up the trail. The guy wore a dark red hooded robe, which was extremely puzzling to me, given that this summertime was only just beginning to end. He can't be comfortable wearing that, I thought. He raised his hands to the air like he was a preacher or something. Weirdo. What's he doing? Ariel asked. Hell if I know. I figured he was either just a really devout yogi, or maybe even part of some weird religious group. Either way, I saw no reason at first to be alarmed by it. That was until I saw him step forward towards the edge of the overlook, arms still outstretched at each side. He isn't about to... I was cut off when I heard him begin shouting out beyond the overlook. I couldn't tell you what he was saying or what language it was. Honestly, looking back, I'm almost thoroughly convinced it wasn't even human. One thing was for sure, it definitely wasn't English. The best way I can describe it was like some archaic invocation or something. It sounded like he was saying something like Adot, Adishalok, Adikan, Adreok, Audin. If you could have actually told me what any of that meant, you'd deserve a medal. Anyway, he stood there shouting this, repeating at least 5 times or so before going silent again. I noticed that by that time a small crowd of fellow hikers had stopped and began gathering together around the area, observing the man's strange antic. He didn't even seem to notice this though, continuing to shout that weird chanting from the edge of the overlook with his hands outstretched. I even saw a few of them take out their phones and snap pictures. Despite the odd nature of this little scene, people seemed more curious than disturbed. That is, except for me. I don't know why, but something about the foreign words that guy was shouting seemed to resonate with me. And not in a wholesome way either. It was like some part of me just knew that whatever was being said wasn't anything good, like some sort of premonition or omen. Finally, I stood up and found myself walking towards him. As I had made my way through the crowd and gotten about a foot or 2 away from him, he took 2 more steps forward himself, closer to the edge. That's when the crowd's fascination was replaced with shock and panic. Oh my god, he's gonna jump! Now I was panicking. I dashed over the last few inches and thrusted my hand out to his shoulder. Hey, wait, don't! He just froze dead, his toes now right up against the ledge, and dropped his arms. Okay, will I have his attention? I began struggling to try and think of what to say. My adrenaline was spiking so much that I could hardly form a coherent sentence, much less any sort of dissuasion. Keeping my hand on his shoulder, I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. Come on, Travis. Think. Hey, you got a name, pal? I figured that would be my best bet to start engaging him with. Something simple. I was still shaking a bit. I figured though, now that I had my foot in the door, so to speak, I had at least stood a chance of talking him away from the ledge. He was still. Unnaturally still. I'll admit, had he not been so animate just a few seconds ago, I'd have thought I was holding onto a statue. Would you like a drink? I'm sure dressed the way you are in this heat and all, you've got to be parched. I was cut off when I heard the most deafening shriek burst forth from him. I was forced to let go of his shoulder to cover my ears, fastening my eyes shut painfully tight. Just as suddenly it happened, however, it was gone. I opened my eyes to see that I wasn't on the trail anymore. In fact, I wasn't even in the Glade Mountains anymore. All around me was a barren, desert-like wasteland that stretched for miles, seemingly to no clear end. Where the hell am I? It didn't even feel real. I'm not really sure how to explain it other than that. It was like I was in some dream world or something. I didn't feel hot or cold, and I wasn't thirsty or anything. From behind me in the distance I heard some deep-toned chorus slowly crescendo. It almost sounded like one of those Gregorian chants, except it was in that same alien tongue the man on the mountain was shouting. I turned to see what looked like 3 druids, all in red cloaks, dragging some woman along the arid dirt. From the looks of it, the woman was obviously being taken against her will, because she was thrashing and kicking wildly, growling and shrieking like an animal. Her eyes were pitch black and dripping with some black substance that looked like tar, almost. I also saw that her skin was torn and shredded in places, as if she'd been attacked by a wild animal. What is this? What's going on here? Who even are these people? Some crazy cult or something? My train of thought was derailed though, overridden by growing panic when I noticed them approaching closer and closer to me. Oh God, they're coming from me. I'm next, aren't I? I frantically threw my head in every direction, trying to find something, anything, to hide behind. In no direction could I see anything but the scorching desert. To my shock, they seemed to not be interested in me. My relief was instantly transformed into a mass confusion, however, when the figures came right up to me, only to pass through me like they were a mirage. I turned around to see that the 3 hooded figures were now behind me, still dragging the woman along, howling and struggling. My head was spinning so much that I couldn't even begin questioning myself as to what was happening. How they just walked through me like that? How in the... With no other instinct, I decided to follow behind them. Lucky enough, with them not seeming to be aware of my existence as displayed, it was a relatively easy matter to essentially tailgate behind them. The other thing that perplexed me was that, despite how quickly they seemed to be carrying themselves, and how the desert seemed to stretch on for an eternity, I was able to keep up with them perfectly. Normally, I'd usually tucker out after about half the length we'd walked. Here though, I just felt fine, like I'd only just started walking. I still couldn't tell you how long this went on for exactly. Eventually though, I actually saw something in the far distance. At first it just looked like a dark speck resting on the horizon against the sun. The closer and closer we approached it, the more it grew and its features came into view. I could see that it looked to be some sort of small castle or tower. As they continued approaching the tower, I could hear their chanting get louder. Suddenly I began to notice more of them gathering around it in every direction. All of them dressed in red robes and raising their arms to the air, hailing the ones in front of me. Their combined chanting began to mix together to form one unified invocation. When we reached the tower, the chanting ceased abruptly. The monolithic tower was tall and slim, built from dark stone, and was crowned with large, jagged needle-like spikes across the tops of its 3 battlements. It reminded me a lot of those old medieval pictures you see in children's storybooks, where a princess would be locked up in, or something like that. Up close though, it appeared to be far more sinister than that. I began to hear faint screams coming from the tower in front of me. My blood started to drop significantly in temperatures when I saw the sky then transform from the normal oceanic blue to a dark blood red. Slowly I felt the ground beneath me rumble. It wasn't like how an earthquake rumbles, but rather like a stomach. I know how that sounds, but that's what it was like. Whereas with an earthquake, the entire ground beneath would shake as one. This was more like the ground was pulsing like a heartbeat, undulating beneath me and seemingly becoming malleable. Hearing the creaking noise, I looked up to see the large iron gate slowly rise up to reveal the entrance to the tower. In its organised fashion, the hooded figures entered one by one, disappearing into the dark recesses within the tower. That's when I could hear the screams become louder, clearer, like they were surrendering me. Like before, I was forced to my knees, covering my ears and closing my eyes. When I opened them again, everything was dark. I couldn't even see my hands right in front of my face. I tried to feel around me for some sort of light source or anything like that. All I could feel was the air around me. Slowly I could hear the sounds of growling snarls from ahead. I still couldn't see anything or anyone. Where is that coming from? Suddenly the growls were drowned out by an intense shriek of pain. That's when, directly in front of me, I could see a man hunched over another person's body. He was stuffing meaty chunks, presumably flesh, into his mouth, devouring them mercilessly. He rose up and screamed to the air in the weird language while tearing at his face, ripping it to shreds as black liquid drained from his eyes. I was horrified. I was confused. I was panicked. All of those and others I don't even know how to begin describing. What was this? What was going on here? Why was I seeing this? What does it all even mean? As I stood fumbling hopelessly to attempt making an iota of sense out of the chaotic nightmare I was witnessing, I watched as the black slime that came from the man's eyes quickly engulfed his now skinless face. The man's howling was soon muffled by it as it flooded over his mouth. I almost was ready to vomit when, as the slime began to coat his body, I watched the flesh peel itself away from him like it was paper. Eventually the slime consumed him completely and he just stood there, neck arched up like he was still trying to scream to the black sky of nothing above. After a few seconds his body finally relaxed and the black slime sorta coated into him. I think it'd be safe to say that what I saw next is responsible for the altogether collapse of my mental health. When whatever, was finally revealed again, I screamed. The thing that was now in front of me, the thing that was a human man only 20 seconds ago, was now just about anything but. It had no skin at all on its body, looking like something of a medical diagram. Its arms and legs were slender and gangly. The head, if you could even call it that anymore, was like if all the skin on that should have been on the body had somehow wrapped itself around the head and twisted itself in every grotesque fashion imaginable. It was pulsing rhythmically as if following some weird beat or cadence. From everywhere, yet nowhere, a choral voice boomed one single word, repeating over and over again, "Melios! Melios! Melios!" Suddenly the carcass, the thing that was once a man, started to unravel on itself and seemingly spread all around beneath me. I couldn't take it anymore. I closed my eyes and covered my ears, screaming and shaking my head. No! No! This isn't happening! This isn't happening! This isn't... I came to see that I was back in the mountains, surrounded by the crowd and the hooded man in front of me. I found myself in a fetal position in the spot I'd been standing in. Looking around, I saw some of the crowd had their phones out and were primarily fixed on me. How long have I been out? I stood up again and turned to the man whose back was still turned to me. What the hell are you? In response, he stretched his arms out again, grabbed his shoulder again. Hey, I was cut off, however, when he boomed out from the ledge again. Jubilex Xantis Melios! He then shifted his weight forward and attempted to hurl himself off the ledge of the overlook, taking me with him. Thinking quickly, I was able to grab hold of the edge with one hand and his robe was grasped tightly in the other. I noticed that the hand holding the robe felt lighter than it should have. Chancing the risky look over my shoulder, I saw that I was now clutching an empty red robe. I saw that the man was still rolling down the mountain. Finally, his body crashed to the ground below. Out of animal reflex, I winced and my body tensed, imagining his body breaking when it hit the ground. When I opened my eyes again, I saw him sprawled out on the ground. He lay motionless, despite otherwise appearing perfectly intact, like he hadn't just plummeted at least 500 feet to the ground, hitting every rocky bump on the way down. My eyes bugged out further when I saw him actually stand up. But how? That fall should have crushed every bone in his body. My shock was immediately eclipsed with terror when, squinting my eyes, I could see that the man, the thing, standing at the bottom of the Glade Mountains was the same skinless monstrosity I saw before. It stood there at the bottom, cricking its deformed head upwards like it was looking up at me, before darting off and out of view. Before I even realised it, my grip slipped from the ledge and I then plummeted down the mountain myself. I blacked out after the third impact of my head against the rocks. When I woke again, I was in a medical chopper, being airlifted off the side of the mountain. The ride to the hospital saw me blacking out at least 3 or 4 times. Each time, my nightmares had me reliving the horrific things I saw on the overlook. In them, I could see people mauling each other like uncaged animals. Every time, only one would be left, only to be taken by the figures in red hooded robes. I saw each time their numbers would increase. I could see legions of them, all uniformly chanting,
Atreok, Atre, Jubilex, Xantis, Melios.
The last time I woke up, it was to the slow, high-pitched beep of the EKG monitor beside my bed. I remember feeling disorientated by the fluorescent lighting of my room. My vision eventually composed itself when the nurse walked in, placing a tray of meatloaf and chocolate pudding with a small bottle of water in front of me. "Oh, you're awake," she said in a rather timid voice. Where am I?" My head still felt like it was swimming, adrift in a sea of madness. "Garrett General Hospital, sir. What happened?" God, my head. My head pounded and felt like it was trying to explode. The nurse just smiled, albeit a pretty plastic smile, and replied that I'd taken a nasty dive off of the mountain. All at once the whole scene came back to me. The hike, the overlook, the man, the thing in the red robe. The hike. Aerial. I shot bolt upright, 2 seconds from leaping from the bed when the nurse urged me to calm down and lay back down. After a second I complied and asked her if anyone had been in to visit. She just nervously smiled and shook her head again. Not that I'm aware of, sir. How long have I been here? I called out to her as she was heading for the door. She stopped and replied with the same awkward smile. Oh, about 3 days. Slowly I relaxed in the bed again. 3 days? Why hasn't she been to see me? Right as the nurse was leaving, 2 police officers who were standing outside the door asked if they could come in. She shot a quick back and forth glance at me and them before nodding her head and exiting the room. Are you Travis Evans? One of them, a short blonde female officer, asked. I just sort of dazedly groaned and, I'm Officer Pike, and this is Officer Norris. We're from the Garrett County Police Department, and we'd like to ask you a few questions concerning the incident. My head was still throbbing intensely. Okay, I mumbled. She then started asking me if I'd known the man at all beforehand. I slowly shook my head. Never? Not even in passing? No. Why? She ignored me and went on. Are you or have you ever been part of any organised hate groups or terrorist groups? Now I was thoroughly confused. Huh? No. What is this all about? She looked at her partner and then back to me. She then pulled out her phone and began scrolling before turning it to me. Sir, we have here multiple eyewitnesses with video footage of you pushing the man off the cliff. What? I nearly jumped up again. The next went to Officer Pike. A taller, stouter man slowly reached for what looked like his taser. Calm down, sir, Officer Pike urged. I stopped, still remaining upright. I don't know what you're talking about here. I didn't push him. I was actually trying to save him. What do you mean? She asked. He was about to jump. I was trying to dissuade him. She showed me the phone. It was a video from social media that showed me curled up, shaking and screaming, before standing back up and grabbing the man again before we both go over the edge. It was titled, Guy Has Mental Breakdown and Shoves Himself and Another Man to Their Deaths on the Mountain Trail. I nearly had a heart attack. That's not what happened. I was trying to save him. He was about to jump. My head started to ache worse, causing me to have to relax again in the bed. I don't want to have to tell you to calm down again, sir. We're going to be looking into this case thoroughly. We'll need you to stick around the area in case further details lead us back to you. After that, she and her partner stood up and headed for the door. Wait, what about his body? Where is it? She paused, grabbing the door handle. She looked to her partner and he answered, We're still combing the bottom of the mountain pass for it. Well, wait, you haven't? But they already left the room. They haven't found his body? You'd think that would have made me feel somewhat relieved, right? That mean I could possibly clear my name as a deranged psychopathic killer, right? But then that would mean all of the other stuff I saw was real. The thoughts of the tower, the grisly metamorphosis, the ground made of living flesh, sent a paralysing fear through me. Slowly the dots began to connect in my brain, foggy as it may have still been from the pain. I began to realise that the man, thing, whatever you want to call it, must have been some sort of messenger or something. I remember how the Bible would talk of prophets foretelling of some great event that was yet to occur. Events like the end of days. So that's how the world ends. No divine wrath, no great war, no second ice age, just flesh destroying flesh. Eventually the nurse came back in to collect my meal tray. She hesitated when she saw that I hadn't so much as touched any of the food. How could I, or anyone for that matter, have any kind of appetite after experiencing stuff like this? I just politely asked if she put the food somewhere safe for later. She silently nodded and collected the tray. I also asked her if she could bring me my phone. Again she looked at me nervously before nodding and leaving the room. After she brought me my phone, the first thing I did was to try and call Ariel. I must have called at least 20-something times, all straight to voicemail. I tried texting her, letting her know that I was okay and to hit me back as soon as she could. That was 3 hours ago, and I've not heard a thing from her. She thinks I'm a murderer. That led me to write this. I don't know who's going to believe me about a single thing I've said here. Fair enough, I suppose. It's not like I can really prove it yet. I guess for now all you need to know is that first, I'm not a murderer, and second, that the end is coming for us, and it's more horrifying than anything that's been written to date. I don't know when. Maybe it'll be years from now, maybe it'll be tomorrow. I don't know, but it's coming, and I'm sure it'll be soon. But it's coming, and I'm sure it'll be soon, and that there's nothing we can hope for in the end. I know, because it's what the Red Prophet showed me before he jumped. And I hope you all enjoy the following blooper reel. I would just like to say a very big thank you to all of the authors that I have. I would just like to say a very big thank you to all of the authors that I have worked with and all the ones that I will work with in the future. If you would like to support the channel and buy me a very much loved coffee. God, it's so beautiful out today. God, it's so beautiful out today. Looking the way he did, I figured he was either just a really devout yogi. I figured he was either just a really devout yogi, or maybe even part of some weird religious group. I'll admit, had he not been so animate just a few seconds ago, I'd have thought I was holding onto a statue. In fact, I wasn't even in the Glade Mountains anymore. I turned to see what looked like 3 druids, all in red cloaks, dragging some woman along the arid dirt. Lucky enough, with them not seeming to be aware of my existence as displayed, it was a relatively easy matter to essentially tailgate behind them. I began to hear faint screams coming from the tower in front of me. After a few seconds, his body finally relaxed, and the black slime sorta coated into him. Suddenly, the carcass that the thing that was once a man. Each time my name Each time my nightmares had me reliving the horrific things I saw on the Overlook. I could see legions of them, all uniformly chanting. My vision eventually composed itself when the nurse walked in. "Calm down, sir," Officer Pike. "Calm down, sir," Officer Pike urged. I guess for now all you need to know is that first, I'm not a murderer. Hey family, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Very big thank you to Corpse Child for allowing me to narrate this awesome story. Make sure to check out Corpse's Reddit for more brilliant stories. Also be sure to check out the Corpse Child playlist here for more of their stories that I have narrated already. Take care everyone, and I hope you all have a wonderful and peaceful night. And don't forget, where fear is, happiness is not.